This is Howard K. Smith with Harry Reasoner and Barbara Walters in ABC News election headquarters. The national popular count is now almost three-quarters over, with 71% of the precincts reporting. Carter has 51% of the vote, to Ford's 48%. And one individual result that adds to Ford's total is ABC News projects that President Ford has carried Nevada, and he has carried it by a very close vote. Harry?
And another result that adds even further to President Ford's electoral total, in the state of Iowa, which has been very close all evening, President Ford has opened up a lead now of about 11,000 votes, with 97% of the precincts reporting. He's 50% to Jimmy Carter's 49%, and ABC News projects that lead will hold up, that Mr. Ford will take Iowa and its 9 electoral votes by a close margin.
The electoral vote, which is, of course, the vote that elects the president, is now Ford 160, Carter 224. Ford still has a long way to go. California could help out an awful lot, but it still wouldn't put him across.
We can take a look at, Howard, if we want to now, we can take a look at how the map looks. You can see where the support has gone for each candidate by taking a look at our map, which should come up on the board and will outline the states. Do we have it? There we go. The dark blue is for Carter, and the yellow is Ford, and you see down in the south, that's Mississippi, which is still not come in, which is still holding out. Way up in the north, that's Maine, which is still a toss-up. We still don't know how that's going. Texas, still too close to call. California, of course, that's the big one that Harry just mentioned, and that is, at this point, too close. With 13% of the precincts from California reporting, it is Ford by 51% to Carter's 48%. It's becoming somewhat of a tighter race. Carter had started out very strong in California, and his lead had just fallen, so that Ford was predicted to have a lead in that state, but as we said, it's too soon to really know what's going on there. By the way, a very important proposition in California, a referendum, Proposition 14, which would guarantee secret ballot elections and other proposals that would boost farm workers' organizations, that seems to be going down in defeat. It was something that Governor Brown had supported, and it seems to, as we said, be going down. We have a report from Hawaii, at least a beginning report. Hawaii, which has traditionally been a Democratic state, it's 50-50 at this point, where you see 100% of the precincts. That doesn't mean, in this case, that 100% of the precincts have reported. That means that that in Hawaii, there is a partial vote from 100% of the precincts. It's not all of the vote of all of those precincts, but it's still 50-50 there.
Well, we've still got a couple of squeakers in my area. The state of Texas, with 26 electoral votes, which would be very big for either man who gets it. 82% of the precincts are now reported there. Governor Carter has been holding a pretty steady 52 to 48% of the vote, with 1% for Eugene McCarthy. Both of America's major wire service, Associated Press and United Press International, have given the state of Texas to Governor Carter. ABC News has yet feels there are some elements there that might mess things up, and we have not called that state. Similarly, in the state of Wisconsin, 78% or 70% of the precincts in Wisconsin have reported. Jimmy Carter has 50% of the votes, with Gerald Ford's 47%, much closer, and with presumably a good deal of the farm and western part of the state still to come in.
And those two vital Midwestern states refuse to come down off the fence, Ohio and Illinois. In Ohio, with 85% of the precincts having reported in, Ford and Carter both have 49%, with barely 1,000 votes between them. And in Illinois, the same situation. Carter, 49%, Ford, 49%, and there is less than 1,000 votes between them. Well, a while ago, we talked to you about Lou Harris's ABC national model, which shows you how this vote might come out and what the effect of the vote so far has been. And it proves that issues have had a role in this vote so far. For example, Jimmy Carter's campaign strategy, stressing the issues of unemployment and jobs, worked well for him, helping to build his slim lead in unemployment-impacted precincts. Voters went strongly for Carter, 61% to 39%, getting on to 2-1. Tax reform was another issue that worked strongly to Carter's favor. Among those who considered tax reform a major issue, Carter was able to poll 61% of the vote to the president's 38, again getting on towards 2-1. Inflation, however, was not an issue which worked to Carter's advantage. People concerned with this issue voted for Mr. Ford 59% to 40%. Harry?
We now have a projection in the important state of Texas, which has been a squeaker all evening, 26 electoral votes. ABC News now projects that Texas will end up in Jimmy Carter's column with 52% to 48% of the votes now, and ABC News believes that he will continue to lead.
And ABC has a projection vote in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi, we project, has gone to Jimmy Carter. It's a very close race, 7 electoral votes. Ford was hoping to get this. This was one of the southern states that he did hope to get, but Mississippi has gone to Carter.
Well, in the Senate, there are a lot of familiar faces that won't be around next year, and Frank Reynolds is keeping a record of them. Frank?
Well, you know, Howard, it's not been a very good night for incumbents, but I must say that the failures have been evenly split. 4 Democratic incumbents will not be coming back to the United States Senate, and 4 Republicans will go back to Washington only to pack their bags and get ready to head for home. Of the Democrats who are being retired by the voters tonight, first there is Vance Hartke of Indiana, who has served in the Senate since 1958. He's had 3 terms. He tried for a 4th and didn't make it. And Joseph Montoya of New Mexico, who has served 2 terms. He is being displaced by the astronaut Harrison Jack Schmitt. Perhaps most surprising of all, Gale McGee of Wyoming, who has served 3 terms in the Senate. He was defeated tonight and will not be coming back. He's an important committee chairman, and as a matter of fact, he ranked 17th in seniority in the Senate. But his longevity didn't help him with the voters of Wyoming today. And Frank Moss of Utah has also served 3 terms, a total of 18 years in the United States Senate, but he will not be coming back. Among the Republicans, one interesting thing about them, 3 of them, their names begin with B, and none of the Republicans who has been defeated tonight served longer than 1 term. We'll begin with J. Glenn Bell of Maryland, defeated by Paul Sarbanes. He was elected in 1970. And then Senator William Brock of Tennessee, he was defeated tonight. He too came into office in 1970. And Jim Buckley, of course, of New York, who was defeated by Daniel Patrick Moynihan tonight. He came in the victor in a 3-way race in 1970, but in 1976, in a straight 2-man race, he lost. And the most famous name of all, I guess, Senator Robert Taft of Ohio, defeated tonight by Howard Metzenbaum. He will not be coming back. You know, when you add that up, that's 8 incumbents defeated, and it is, since we have 8 retiring senators who did not stand for re-election, that means we're going to have at least 16 new faces in the United States Senate, and we have only 1 race still to go, California. Either we'll have the familiar teeth of John Tunney or the tam o'shanter and mustache of S.I. Hayakawa. Howard?
Frank, almost all of those could have been expected, except the one involving Gale McGee. That came as a complete surprise to me. He's very popular. Let's take a look at the electoral vote, the one that decides who will be president. Right now, Ford has 160 electoral votes, and Carter has 257, getting awfully close to that 270 which will decide. Coming up next, more of our continuous election coverage right after this. Well, the electoral vote, as we said, is Ford 160, Carter 257. That is just 13 short for Carter of the number needed to go over the top and be elected. And Ohio is obviously one state that could give it to him. So we're watching Ohio very closely.
Well, another combination of things that could give it to Jimmy Carter. Wisconsin, for instance, where he holds a lead, 50% to 47%, and where a factor may be the votes of Eugene McCarthy, who's getting about 2%. Wisconsin wouldn't put him over, but if he got Wisconsin, all he would need would be one other fairly small state to do it. Whereas now, Mr. Ford cannot afford any more losses in electoral votes.
And of course, we still have California, but California at this point, Ford with 51%, Carter with 48%. It had been said earlier that if more than 55% of the vote came in, that Carter would probably win, and if less than 50, that it would go for Ford. At least that was one of the discussions that pollsters were taking. It seems now that the voter percentage has been about 56%, and that's equal to the number 4 years ago. So it hasn't been a great voter turnout, but it hasn't been very bad.
The predictions they were making at some point during the summer that would be the lowest voter turnout since Calvin Coolidge was elected in 1924 is certainly not held up.
No, Ford has got to win almost all the remaining states to make it.
Almost. 160 to 257, according to ABC's projection. Wisconsin, which is, well, I don't know whether it's leaning toward Carter or not. It's giving him a 3% lead with 72% of the precincts in. Would give him 11 votes, which would bring him to 258. And then it could be either Hawaii or Oregon, or in a small state could bring him.
Bill Werdum is now at Carter, at the ballroom where Carter is in Atlanta. Let's go to Bill Werdum. Bill, can you hear us?
Well, I don't know whether you can hear me here in the World Congress Center in Atlanta. There's a huge crowd, 25,000 strong, we are told, waiting here impatiently for Jimmy Carter to come in here and make what they confidently expect will be his acceptance speech. The crowd is somewhat subdued now, although you can hear music playing in the background by a rock group and a country western group that have rocked the foundations of this great hall. But as I said, the crowd is somewhat subdued because they've been here at least 6 hours. It has been a long night. It is being a long night. And as you look around the hall, you can see people sitting on chairs or sitting on the floor with looks of weariness on their faces. But this weariness dissipates rapidly when anybody comes in here to make an announcement. Congressman Andrew Ford of Georgia, one of Jimmy Carter's most stalwart and earliest supporters, was in here just a few minutes ago. He just came in to talk to the crowd and remind them that Jimmy Carter was, in his words, a great guy. And, of course, they all applauded. They applauded anything he said about Jimmy Carter tonight. Ever since they've been here, since 8 o'clock, they have been absolutely convinced that Jimmy Carter is going to win, and they're even selling buttons in this hall here tonight that say, President Jimmy Carter. Along the side of the hall, there is a VIP walkway, and there are 2,000 or 3,000 people here close to the walkway who are going to get to see the governor walk in personally. These people are those early supporters and constant supporters of the governor. Elsewhere in the hall, among this large 25,000 strong crowd, there are people from all over the South and from states in the Northeast also, but mostly Southerners, here to welcome the victory of their native son. I can't see the TV screen in the back of the hall, but they put up an announcement just now which brought on that response. And this is the kind of thing that's been happening all night long here. A quiet period followed by cheers and shouts as their man gets ever nearer to victory. Now back to New York.
Well, Bill, even if he should not make it by some combination of votes, I think it would be historic nonetheless that after over 100 years, a Southerner got that close on his own without being somebody's vice president. Remarkably historic.
And of course, in Atlanta, they should feel particularly good because not only is Jimmy Carter from Georgia, but this is where he kept the seat of his whole organization. They didn't move to another place. They stayed in Atlanta, and everything was run from Atlanta. So they've been really very involved all the way through.
That worries me a little bit, Barbara, because I think Georgia is a great state, but it's a middle-sized state, and it's a very narrow base from which to run a national campaign. I just pray that the administration won't be run from that narrow base if he wins.
There have been those who have already talked about it being a palace guard, similar to Richard Nixon's palace guard. After all, most of the men involved with Jimmy Carter are quite young, 31 years old, 33. So the oldest, well, there are only two who are considered, shall we say, middle-aged and not. 43-year-old Gerald Raftoon, he's one of the old men of the group, and he's in charge of the media, he's in charge of the advertising. And Charles Thurber, who's 59, I consider that very young, but 59, he is by far the oldest involved with Jimmy Carter. And just how much they will keep to themselves and how much they will control the major jobs, of course, no one knows.
You know, I had a chat with Jimmy Carter. I asked for it without cameras, just a quiet, private chat. And I said, why don't you get Clark Clifford to help you if you plan to make a transition? He's the world's best expert. He wrote the memorandum, which Truman followed and won the 1948 election with. Carter said, nobody from another administration.
So they have a man named Jack Watson who's doing it, and I don't have all of the ages in my head, but I think he's something like 33, and he's been in charge of the transitional stages, and it's a name no one knows, and however, Carter trusts him, and that's what's important.
Well, on the other hand, every president brings his own people. Every president-elect brings his own people on the assumption that Jimmy Carter may be a president-elect 13 electoral votes from now. And they don't all then go to Washington with him, and Jimmy Carter is being very precise in saying he doesn't know what's going to happen to Hamilton Jordan and Jody Powell and all those young people. They may or may not be in positions of power.
Well, let's come back to this, but coming up next, more of our continuous election coverage right after.